Welcome to today's What Will Move the Market show. I'm your host Prem. It's Tuesday, November 25th, 2025, and here is everything you need to know as the markets open for today. Let's start with how Wall Street wrapped up yesterday, with some really encouraging developments that should set a positive tone for the rest of the week. The S&P 500 surged 1.5%, closing at 6,605. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 0.4% to finish at 46,448. And the Nasdaq Composite, which really led the charge, soared 2.7%, finishing at 22,872. This strong performance came as Fed officials signaled openness to a potential interest rate cut in December, with traders now pricing in around 77 to 85% probability of a quarter-point reduction. That's huge for risk sentiment, and it fueled broad-based gains across all 11 sectors of the S&P. Technology stocks were among the biggest beneficiaries, recovering some of the ground they lost in recent weeks after the AI-driven volatility earlier this month. The optimism around potential Fed easing reversed some of the concerning momentum we've seen in November, particularly in growth and tech names. Now let's shift our focus to Indian ADRs trading overnight. Infosys ADR declined 2.43%, while HDFC Bank ADR eased 0.79%. ICICI Bank ADR slipped 0.94%, and Reliance Industries ADR dipped 0.34%. These modest declines reflect a bit of caution among Indian investors tracking overnight US market movements, though the magnitude of the sell-offs has been relatively contained. The key takeaway here is that despite the strong close on Wall Street yesterday, Indian quality names are digesting the recent volatility with selective pressure on financial stocks. Moving to Asian markets and the all-important Gift Nifty signal, we're seeing some interesting dynamics this morning. The Gift Nifty index is pointing to a mix to down open for Indian markets. As of the early morning trades, major Asian indices are displaying mixed signals. The Shanghai Composite continues to face headwinds, while the Hang Seng is up 1%, Nikkei is close to 1% up. This morning's pre-market indicators suggest investors are waiting for global economic data due later today to make their next big moves. Asia-Pacific traders will also be closely monitoring the US data calendar, particularly the Producer Price Index and retail sales figures expected this morning, which could influence sentiment heading into the Indian Open. On the global front, there are several developments worth your attention. First, the Federal Reserve narrative has shifted meaningfully. After New York Fed President John Williams signaled support for another rate cut and FOMC member Christopher Waller joined the chorus, market expectations for a December rate cut have firmed significantly. We're now looking at roughly 77 to 85% probability pricing in the possibility of a quarter-point cut at the December 9-10 Fed meeting. This is driving optimism in emerging markets like India, as easier monetary policy globally tends to support capital flows. However, critical US economic data drops today at 8:30 a.m. ET, including October producer prices and retail sales, along with consumer confidence figures. These could swing sentiment depending on the strength of the data. Beyond that, US-India trade negotiations continue to be in focus, with expectations for a potential deal that could stabilize the rupee, which has been under pressure. On the domestic front, here's what matters for today. The Reserve Bank has been actively intervening in the forex market to support the rupee, which hit an all-time low last week but recovered somewhat after RBI action, closing yesterday at 89.23. Currency weakness is a concern because it feeds into imported inflation and margin pressures for corporates, though some analysts believe the current weakness is temporary and could reverse once trade negotiations show progress. Foreign institutional investor flows remain a key issue, with FIIs having net sold around 4,238 crore in November so far, though the selling has moderated recently. The bigger picture, however, is that Q3 earnings season is gathering momentum in India, and analysts expect corporate results to become a significant positive driver as we head into the final quarter of the year. Domestic institutional investors have been steady supporters of Indian equities, and this is providing a cushion against FII volatility. Let's talk technical levels for today's trading. The Nifty 50 is facing immediate resistance at 26,000, with secondary resistance at 26,096 and the all-time high of 26,246 to 26,277. On the downside, key support is at 25,857, followed by 25,741, and then deeper support at 25,672. For the Bank Nifty, the index ended yesterday consolidating in a tight range. Immediate support is around 58,800, with a breakdown potentially extending toward 58,600. On the upside, if we can clear 59,000, the next target becomes 59,500 to 60,000. The key message here is that today is all about the 26,000 level for Nifty 50. If we hold above that, expect consolidation and potential bounce. A break below could accelerate weakness toward the support zones. On commodities, the picture is fairly stable for energy and precious metals. Crude oil, both WTI and Brent, have been grinding to lower levels this week. Here's today's trading game plan for you. With major US economic data coming this morning and Fed rate cut expectations at elevated levels, we're in a window where sentiment could shift quickly. The smart play for active traders is to remain disciplined around key technical levels. Respect support and resistance zones, don't chase breakouts just yet, and let the US data guide momentum for the session. For longer-term investors, current volatility is presenting selective opportunities in quality large-cap stocks that have seen recent corrections, especially IT and financial services names trading at more reasonable valuations. The broader trend remains intact, but patience and tactical approach will be rewarded more than aggressive positioning right now. Be especially cautious with leverage bets until the US data out this morning passes. Thanks for tuning in to today's What Will Move the Market show. Stay tuned for the evening wrap-up, and please do send in your market questions and insights. Subscribe to this podcast to hear US every morning as the Indian markets open. And don't forget to check back with us throughout the trading day for live updates on how these levels hold up and what the US data means for your portfolio. Have a productive trading day ahead, and we'll see you tonight with the market close analysis.